Bring her back. Don't hurt her. Just bring her back. Let her go.
Polly Klaas had a lifelong fear of the dark. She couldn't sleep unless there was a little light on. She was scared of a mysterious boogeyman and of the possibility of being kidnapped. It was something she had discussed often with her parents. Her father would recall with bitter irony how he had assured his daughter that everything would be all right. I would always be there to protect her. One fateful night, her biggest fear turned to reality. In today's case, we will be looking at how a child was abducted from her own home by a criminal who had repeatedly evaded the justice system. This is the landmark case that would change California law forever. Let's take a closer look at what happened to Polly Klaas and how it could have been avoided. It was the beginning of fall in Petaluma, California. Petaluma is a pretty town in Sonoma County. It's about 1 hour north of San Francisco. On Friday, October 1st, 1993, a 12-year-old girl named Polly had 2 of her friends over at her mom's house. They were having a lot of fun that night, and earlier in the evening they just hung out together. They ate some popcorn and watched movies. It was a normal, fun night for the girls. As the night went on, Polly's sister got tired and went to her room to sleep. A little while after that, Polly's mom, Eve, also needed to go to bed. The 3 girls were still wide awake because they were excited about hanging out together. So they went up to Polly's bedroom. They closed the door and kept talking to each other late into the night. At that moment, everything seemed fine. It was just a normal night. But there was something the girls and Polly's family didn't know. Several people were to remember seeing a thickly built, bearded male with bushy gray hair loitering on the sidewalk around Polly's home. He was not doing anything threatening and could have been a vagrant, or perhaps even just a fellow out for a leisurely evening stroll. But he was not. He had a horrifying plan in mind. Polly Hannah Klaas was born on January 3, 1981 in Fairfax, California, to Mark and Eve Klaas. Her parents divorced when she was only 2.5. Mark Klaas was later to remark that the couple had an unsuccessful marriage but a successful divorce, because the 2 remained friends, and while Eve got custody, Mark faithfully visited his only child. Eve and Polly would move around a great deal while she was growing up. That may be one reason that people often described Polly as shy and say she had trouble forming friendships. Although often withdrawn, Polly had a dramatic streak. She very much enjoyed being in school plays and cherished the dream of acting professionally someday. Music was a major interest, and she was active in the school band. She had a good sense of humor and enjoyed dressing up like an old lady and hobbling about with a cane, which she would use to suddenly whack someone on the behind. Polly spent most holidays and weekends with her dad, who ran a Hertz rent-a-car office in San Francisco's Fairmont Hotel. Wherever Polly's family moved, Mark was there. He also worked as a teacher's aide in some of Polly's schools. Her grandfather, Joe Klaas, said they had an incredible relationship and remembered that if anyone made a joke about Mark, she would jump to his defense. Overall, Polly was a beautiful young girl who was looking forward to an amazing life. Before that terrible night in 1993, Davis had already established himself as a lifelong criminal. Richard Allen Davis was born on June 2, 1945, as the 3rd of 5 children. His early life has been described as disadvantaged. When Davis was only 3 years old, he and his brothers were playing with matches, so their mother held each boy's hand to a hot stove to punish them for it. She thought this would stop them from playing with fire again, but this kind of punishment doesn't work. Instead, it traumatized Davis and added to his sadistic tendencies later on. His father was equally awful and described as unloving. He was mentally unstable and suffered from hallucinations. He was reported to have taken a gun outside the home and shot at mirages. Robert would also beat Richard, breaking his jaw on one occasion and pushing him through an interior wall on another, and was known to be harsh with the others. He witnessed many violent fights between his parents, who finally divorced when Davis was 11. But this only marked the beginning of his troubling behavior. When he was 12, he got in trouble for breaking into places. This happened again when he was 15. At 17, he got caught stealing a motorcycle. The judge gave him a choice: join the Army or go to the California Youth Authority. Davis chose the Army, but he only stayed for 13 months before they told him to leave. Then, in 1973, an incredibly suspicious death was connected to Davis. He went to a party at the home of 18-year-old Marlene Voris. That same night, she was found dead of a gunshot wound, and there were 7 suicide notes found at the scene. The police concluded that she committed suicide, but friends of Marlene believe Davis murdered her. He didn't go to jail for that, but he did go to jail for something else. He kidnapped a woman named Frances Mays, using a knife to make her get into his car. He drove her to a remote location, but Frances somehow grabbed the knife and ran out of the car to escape. After that, Davis kept going in and out of jail. He would break into places, sell things he stole, and get arrested, but he always got out after a short time. It was a depraved cycle. Whenever he got out, he'd always go right back to living a life of crime. While in state prison, Davis told a psychiatrist that stealing made him feel better. In his own words, it relieved the tensions built up inside him. The psychiatrist diagnosed Davis with an assortment of personality disorders, including avoidant personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and schizoid personality disorder. It was concluded that he couldn't control himself and was dangerous to other people, but somehow Davis managed to stay out of trouble. In 1982, he got out of prison again and went right back to robbing and hurting people. During this time, he met a woman named Sue Edwards, who became his actual partner in crime. In 1984, Davis and Sue went to a woman's house in Redwood City, California, who they knew had some money. The woman's name was Selena Varich, and Sue knew her through her sister. When they got to Selena's house, they hurt her badly and said they would kill her, her father, and her daughter if she didn't give them $6,000. At first, Selena said no, so they hit her on the head with a gun, causing her to splatter blood. This led to a huge cut that required 5 stitches later. While she was bleeding profusely, Davis and Sue made her wash her hair. Then they took her to the bank to get the money they wanted. Selena said Davis looked evil. His eyes looked demonic. He seemed happy about hurting her. Apparently, Selena's bruises and fear were not enough to alarm bank personnel, as the transaction took place smoothly. Selena turned the cash over to Sue, who then met up with Davis, and the two happily took off. Not long after this, a police officer pulled over Davis because his truck had a broken light. When he ran a check, the officer found warrants for their crimes against Selena, so the couple was arrested. This time, he went to jail for 8 years, while Sue went to jail for a mere 6 months because she lacked a criminal record. In July of 1993, Davis got out of jail again. Just 3 months later, he went to Petaluma. That's when he broke into Polly's home. Polly and her 2 friends were in her bedroom, just hanging out, completely clueless to the fact that Davis was right outside. Now, we don't know the exact reason why he chose to break into Polly's home. Maybe Davis just wanted to steal things from the house, but didn't know Polly and her friends were there. Davis wasn't afraid of getting in trouble with the police either. Remember, he would commit crimes, go to jail, get out, and then commit more crimes. This behavior had just become a way of life for him. Davis got into the house through a window that wasn't locked. Once he was inside, he heard the 3 girls talking and laughing. But before he went to the girls' room, he took a big knife from the kitchen, which shows that he kidnapped Polly on some criminal whim instead of planning it. Davis walked quietly up to Polly's bedroom door and opened it. The 3 young girls were terrified when they saw him, so Davis ordered, "Don't scream or I'll cut your throats." He said if they did what he said, everything would be okay. He was just looking for money and wasn't there to hurt them. Polly offered him a box with $50 in cash. He refused it and told the 3 girls to lie down on the floor. He tied up Polly and her friends with white rope before putting pillowcases over 2 of the girls' heads. He told them he would bring Polly back after he finished stealing valuable things from the house. Polly begged him, "Please don't hurt my mom and sister." Her friends remember the terror in her voice. Then he made them count to 1,000, so they started counting. After a few minutes, they stopped counting so they could listen. The house was quiet. They couldn't hear any footsteps or other noises. Completely panicked, the girls struggled out of their bonds and rushed to Eve's room to tell her what happened. Still groggy from her sleep, Eve thought they were playing a prank on her. The idea was too strange and terrifying. About 30 minutes after Davis broke into Polly's bedroom, Polly's mother called 911 for help. When she talked to the person on the phone, she said, "Apparently, a man just broke into our house and took my daughter." Eve was, understandably, in total disbelief.
Begging for her return.
If you're the man who has Polly, please.
After Eve called for help, the police sent out a message to look for a missing girl and the man who took her. This message went to all of Sonoma County, but there was a problem with how they sent the message. The message went out on Channel 1 of the police radios. Only the sheriffs of each town in the county used Channel 1. The sheriffs were supposed to tell their police officers about the message, but the police officers who were driving around used Channel 3 to talk to each other. This is important to remember. If 2 police officers had gotten the message just 1.5 hours after it was sent out, they might have caught Davis that very night. They might have found Polly before it was too late. Around midnight, something happened about 20 miles north of Polly's home. This was in a place called Santa Rosa. A babysitter was leaving the house where she worked. She saw a car stuck in a ditch. The car was on a long private driveway where not many people go, so this seemed strange to her. The babysitter went to a gas station nearby. She called Dana Jaffe, the woman who owned the house where she was babysitting. She told Dana about the car, which Dana thought was strange and concerning too, especially since it was the middle of the night. Dana was a single mom who worked as a cook. She had the babysitter watching her daughter while she was at work, and she didn't want to deal with whatever was happening. She was tired after working all night. So she got in her car with her daughter, and they left the house in case the person in the ditch turned out to be dangerous. Dana's gut feeling was right. The person in the ditch was Davis, and he did want to do horrible things that night. As Dana drove away, she actually drove past Davis. She looked right at him. She saw his eyes and thought they looked cold and terrifying. They were the same kind of eyes that Selena, one of Davis's earlier victims, had described years ago. Dana drove to the same gas station where her babysitter was. From there, she called 911 and asked the police to go check on her house. Years later, many realized that this was the pivotal moment where Davis came extremely close to being exposed. 2 police officers came to Dana's house soon after she called. They went up to the car and questioned Davis, who told them he had swerved to avoid hitting a deer. That's why he ended up in the ditch on the driveway. Remember, these officers didn't know about the message to look for Polly. They did a routine check for his driver's license and his car's license plate number. They saw that he had a criminal record, but there were no current arrest orders for him. But since he had just gotten out of prison 3 months ago, the officers didn't fully believe Davis's story about the deer. They thought he might have been planning to rob Dana's house. One thing the officers could never have imagined was the fact that he had kidnapped a 12-year-old girl just a couple of hours earlier. The officers rightly didn't want to let Davis go, so they wanted Dana to make a citizen's arrest. Under California law against trespassers, Dana has the right to go up to Davis and tell him, "I arrest you," while the officers are present. Then the officers could take Davis in and look into things more. But Dana didn't want to do this. She just wanted to go to bed and not make a big deal about it. So the officers called for a tow truck to get Davis's car out of the ditch. While they waited, they looked inside his car. It was messy, but they didn't see anything that looked really wrong. They did see an open can of beer. Davis said he opened the beer after he got stuck, since he wasn't driving when the police got there. They believed him. They just made him pour out the beer before he started driving again. The tow truck pulled Davis's car out of the ditch. Davis thanked the officers for helping him. Then he got in his car and followed them back to Highway 101. After that, Davis drove away. This turned out to be extremely tragic. It made the search for Polly much harder. The officers had the man who took Polly right there, just hours after he took her. We don't know if Polly was still alive somewhere at that time. But because the officers didn't know about the message to look for Polly, Davis got away again. The news about Polly being taken from her home during a sleepover caused an uproar in the country.
It's the 6th day, and I'm exhausted.
We will never stop
We will never stop. We will never close until we have accomplished our mission and we get my little girl back.
Just 6 months before this happened, the internet had become more accessible to the public. Polly's missing person poster was the first one ever to be shared on the internet. Over the next 2 months, millions of posters with Polly's picture were sent all around the world. Polly's picture was even on the cover of People magazine. Popular TV shows like ABC's 2020 and America's Most Wanted talked about what was happening in the search for Polly. Actress Winona Ryder, who grew up in Petaluma, the same town where Polly lived, offered $200,000 to anyone who could bring Polly back safely. More than 60,000 people called the police about tips related to Polly, and the police looked into more than 12,000 of these tips. It would have been hard to find anyone in America who didn't know that Polly was missing. If you're old enough, you might even remember hearing about Polly's story yourself when it was happening. 2 months after Davis got stuck in Dana Jaffe's driveway, something important happened. It was November 27th. Dana was walking around her property where she had some trees cut down recently and wanted to see how it looked. While she was walking, Dana saw something red in the mud. When she looked closer, she saw it was a dirty pair of red leggings. Next to the leggings, there was a child's black sweatshirt. There were also some white ropes that had been cut. Dana had been hearing a lot about Polly's case on the news. She suddenly remembered the night she saw Davis on her driveway and had a chilling realization. She had unknowingly let a child killer get away. The police came and put tape around the area. Along with the clothes and ropes, they also found a used condom and its wrapper nearby. One of the police officers immediately recognized that the ropes looked like the ones used to tie up Polly's friends. Polly's family also confirmed the clothes belonged to her. Back in Polly's bedroom, the police had found a handprint on the bedpost. They knew it wasn't from Polly's family or friends. Now they hoped it might be from Davis, so they asked many police stations if they had Davis's handprint. Luckily, one of them did. The police arrested Davis 2 days later. They asked him questions and told him about the matching handprint. When they asked if he took Polly, he nodded yes. When they asked if Polly was alive, he shook his head no. Davis agreed to show the police where he left Polly. He took them to a place in the woods near Highway 101. Polly's body was hidden under a piece of wood in a shallow hole. The police think that on the night Davis's car got stuck, he had hidden Polly's body in some bushes nearby. The police officers who saw Davis that night remembered that he was sweating a lot, even though it wasn't very warm. He also had small sticks and dirt on his clothes and in his hair. After the police helped Davis get his car unstuck and he drove away, he must have gone back to get Polly's body. Then he took her to the place in the woods where he buried her. Polly's death led to big changes in how police work and how criminals are punished across the country. In 1994, California made a new law called 3 strikes and you're out. The law was meant to stop people like Davis, who were career criminals, from getting out of jail and hurting more people. The 3 strikes law said that if someone did 3 serious crimes, they would go to jail for a very long time. People hoped this would keep dangerous people off the streets. Maybe even more important than the new law, the police changed how they share information. Remember how the message about Polly didn't get to all the police officers? The California Highway Patrol fixed this problem. Now, when there's an important message about a crime, it goes to every single police channel. This means all police officers get the information right away. When Davis went to court, the trial didn't take very long. This was because of Davis's criminal history. There was a lot of evidence showing he had taken Polly, and he had admitted to doing it. During the trial, Davis said some hurtful things that weren't true to hurt Polly's family. He claimed that Polly had said to him, "Just don't do me like my dad," right before he killed her. This enraged Polly's father, who attempted to lunge at Davis in court before he was restrained. Because of what Davis did to Polly and how he acted in court, the judge said he deserved the death penalty. Mr. Davis, this is always a traumatic and emotional decision for a judge. You made it very easy today by your conduct. Right now, Davis is 70 years old in San Quentin State Prison, waiting for the death penalty. There are 2 groups named after Polly, the Polly Class Foundation and the Class Kids Foundation. These groups work to raise awareness about child kidnappings and demand stronger punishments for those who hurt children. What did you think about today's case? Was polyclass kidnapping and murder avoidable? What do you think should be done with people like Davis? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.